Back in 2014, in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, I was 52 years old and living in the same remote cabin where I'd grown up. My parents, who my kids called Grandma and Grandpa, my wife Rachel, and our 3 sons shared that 4-bedroom house 47 miles from the nearest town. We had a generator, a well, and a root cellar that went deeper than any root cellar needed to go. We also had a secret we'd kept for 30 years, since 1984, when my father found him injured in the woods and made a choice that changed everything. The twins, Marcus and David, were 6 years old. My eldest, Thomas, was 14. They'd grown up knowing what lived in the basement behind the false wall. On July 16th, when the FBI knocked on our door with a warrant, I had maybe 90 seconds to get him deeper into the tunnels my grandfather had dug during Prohibition. I thought the worst part would be explaining this to federal agents. I was wrong. The cabin sat at the end of a 9-mile gravel road that turned to mud every spring and froze solid every winter. My grandfather built it in 1947, back when this part of the mountains was still mostly wilderness. He'd been a bootlegger during Prohibition, and he'd dug a network of tunnels under the property, storage rooms, escape routes, hiding places that connected to natural caves in the hillside. When he died in 1979, my father inherited the property and all its secrets. We lived simply. My mother kept a garden that fed us through summer and fall. My father had worked as a hunting guide until his knees gave out. I did odd jobs for the few neighbors within 20 miles, tree work, repairs, anything that paid cash. Rachel homeschooled the boys from books we ordered online when we drove to the library in town once a month. To anyone who asked, we were just another mountain family living off the grid by choice. Religious, some people assumed. Survivalists, others guessed. We never corrected them. Let people think whatever kept them from asking too many questions. The boys knew the rules from the time they could talk. Never mention what's in the basement. Never bring friends home. Never, ever talk about him to anyone outside the family. Thomas understood why. The twins just accepted it as normal, the way kids accept anything when it's all they've known. And him, the reason for all the secrecy, all the careful planning, all the lies we told the outside world. He'd been with us for 30 years. Since September 1984, when my father found him bleeding and half dead in a ravine 5 miles from the cabin. A creature that wasn't supposed to exist. 8 feet tall, covered in dark reddish-brown fur, with eyes that were far too intelligent to be an animal's. Bigfoot? We were hiding Bigfoot in our basement. I remember the night my father brought him home. I was 22 years old, still single, helping my parents with the property. It was late September, the first real cold snap of the season. My father had been out checking traps and came back just after dark, his truck grinding up the driveway in low gear. I heard it from inside and went out to help him unload whatever he'd caught. He was standing at the tailgate, his face pale in the porch light. "I need your help," he said quietly, "and I need you to promise me you won't panic." I looked in the truck bed and my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. Something massive, covered in matted fur, bleeding from a gash across its ribs. An arm, too long, too thick, hanging over the side. A face that made my stomach drop, because it was almost human, but absolutely wasn't. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. "Bigfoot," my father said, like he was identifying a species of deer. "Found him at the bottom of Miller's Ravine. Looks like he fell, maybe got hit by a truck first. He's dying, and we're going to save him." "We're going to what?" My father looked at me with an intensity I'd never seen before. "This might be the only one left in these mountains. Maybe the only one left anywhere. We let him die. We lose something we can't get back. We save him. We keep him secret. We protect him. That's what we're going to do." It took us 3 hours to get him into the basement. He was unconscious, barely breathing, and must have weighed 600 pounds. We used the engine hoist from the barn, a tarp, and every bit of strength we had. My mother helped, didn't ask questions, just boiled water and tore sheets for bandages, like we were preparing for a home birth instead of trying to save a creature from legend. We laid him on the concrete floor in the old storage room, the one my grandfather had used for aging whiskey. My father cleaned the wound, a deep laceration that looked like it came from barbed wire or jagged metal. We had veterinary supplies, antibiotics meant for livestock, and my mother's nursing training from 50 years ago. "If he lives," my father said as he stitched the wound closed with fishing line, "nobody can ever know. Not friends, not family, not authorities. We tell one person he's dead. They'll take him, study him, cage him. We're all he's got." I nodded. I understood, and I kept that promise for 30 years. He lived. Against all odds, against logic, he survived. It took 6 weeks before he regained consciousness, another month before he could stand. We took shifts sitting with him, making sure he was breathing, cleaning his wound, bringing water and food, raw venison, fish, vegetables from the garden. We didn't know what Bigfoot ate, so we tried everything. When his eyes finally opened, when he looked at me for the first time with full awareness, I saw intelligence there that made my hair stand on end. He wasn't an animal. He was a person. A different kind of person, but a person nonetheless. He didn't try to leave. Even when he was strong enough to walk, to move around the basement, he stayed. My father thought maybe he understood we'd saved him. Or maybe he was too weak still, too injured to survive in the wild. Or maybe, and this was the theory that haunted me, maybe he had nowhere else to go. Maybe we really had found the last Bigfoot in these mountains. We made the space livable, brought down old mattresses, blankets, books with pictures. He couldn't read, but he'd study the pictures for hours, especially images of forests, mountains, animals. He made sounds sometimes, low vocalizations that weren't quite language, but carried meaning. Contentment, curiosity, occasionally something that sounded like grief. I got married in 1987, brought Rachel home to the cabin, and before we even unpacked her things, I took her down to the basement and showed her. She stood in the doorway of that hidden room, staring at the 8-foot creature sitting peacefully in the corner, and she said, "We're going to need better ventilation down here." That's when I knew I'd married the right woman. Thomas was born in 2000. The twins came in 2008, and we raised them with Bigfoot as part of their lives, as normal as having a grandparent in the house. He was gentle with them, careful. He'd let the twins climb on him when they were toddlers, would make soft hooting sounds that made them giggle. Thomas would read to him from picture books, showing him images of the world above. We called him Big around the kids when they were young. Later, when they were old enough to understand, we used his real name, Bigfoot. The legend living in our basement, the secret we protected with everything we had. My father died in 2010, took the secret to his grave. My mother knew she didn't have much time left by 2014. Her heart was failing, though she wouldn't admit it. And I started to worry about what would happen when she was gone, when the responsibility fell entirely to me and Rachel. I should have worried about the FBI instead. The first sign of trouble came in June 2014. A man showed up at our door, said he was from the State Wildlife Commission, wanted to ask about unusual animal sightings in the area. He was polite, professional, asked questions about bear activity, unusual tracks, strange sounds. I told him we kept to ourselves, didn't pay much attention to wildlife beyond what threatened the chickens. He thanked me and left. But something about him felt wrong. The way he looked at the property, the cabin, like he was cataloging everything. The way he asked specifically about the basement. Did we have one? What did we use it for? Was it original to the house? I told Rachel that night, and we agreed to be more careful. No more letting the boys play in the yard unsupervised. No more leaving basement doors unlocked. We moved Bigfoot deeper into the tunnel system, into the natural cave section where he could hide if anyone came searching. He didn't like it. He'd gotten comfortable in his room, had claimed it as his space. Moving him deeper meant less light, less air circulation, more isolation, but he seemed to understand the danger. When I explained, using the simple gestures and sounds we'd developed over the years, he nodded and retreated into the darkness without resistance. 2 weeks later, a different man came. Said he was a researcher studying Appalachian folklore, wanted to interview longtime residents about local legends. Did we know any stories about wild men in the woods? Creatures that walked on 2 legs? He'd heard rumors about this area specifically, dated back decades. I told him no. Told him people made up stories to entertain themselves, that living this far out, you learned real quick what was real and what was bullshit. He smiled, thanked me, left his card. I threw it in the fire as soon as his card disappeared down the road. "They know something," Rachel said that evening. We were sitting on the porch, watching the twins play in the yard while Thomas did his schoolwork inside. My mother was resting, her breathing labored. Someone talked, or someone saw something, or they have some kind of evidence. "Doesn't matter what they think they know," I said. "They can't prove anything, and they're not getting in this house without a warrant." Rachel looked at me. "And if they get a warrant?" I didn't have an answer. We'd prepared for a lot of scenarios over the years: injuries, illness, Bigfoot trying to leave. We'd never prepared for the government coming with legal authority to search every inch of our property. We should have. We should have prepared for exactly that. July started with unusual heat, temperatures pushing into the high 90s, humidity thick enough to swim through. The twins were cranky, confined to the house during the worst of the afternoon sun. Thomas helped my mother in the garden early mornings before the heat became unbearable. And in the basement, in the cool darkness of the tunnels, Bigfoot waited. I'd started bringing him up at night, letting him move around the main basement room for a few hours after everyone was asleep. He needed the exercise, needed the stimulation. 30 years in captivity. Because that's what it was, really, even if we told ourselves it was protection, had taken a toll. He was slower than he used to be, his fur grayer around the face, his movements more careful. Rachel worried about what would happen when he died. Where would we bury him? How would we explain an 8-foot grave on our property if anyone ever searched with ground-penetrating radar? I worried about what we'd do if he got sick, if he needed medical care we couldn't provide. We were keeping him alive, but were we giving him a life worth living? The smell was the hardest part to manage during summer. Bigfoot had a scent, musky animal, strong, that we'd gotten used to over the years. But in the heat, with less air circulation, it became more noticeable. We ran fans constantly, used every odor-neutralizing trick we could find. Visitors were rare, but when they came, we needed the house to smell normal. The twins didn't understand why their friend had to stay hidden. Marcus especially would ask why Big couldn't come up during the day, why he couldn't play in the yard, why they couldn't tell their online friends about him. 6-year-olds don't grasp the concept of mortal danger, of governments and scientists and people who would hurt something just because it was different. Thomas understood better. At 14, he was old enough to see the moral complexity. "Is it right," he asked me one night in July, "keeping him locked up like this? Even if we're protecting him, even if he'd die out there alone? Is this fair to him?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Your grandfather made a choice 30 years ago. We've been living with that choice ever since. Maybe it was the wrong choice, but it's too late to undo it now." "What happens when Grandma dies?" Thomas asked quietly. "When it's just us?" "We keep going," I said. "We keep the promise. We protect him until we can't anymore." 2 weeks later, the FBI arrived, and we discovered exactly how long "until we can't anymore" actually was. July 16th, 2014, 9:30 in the morning. I was in the barn, feeding the chickens, when I heard the vehicles coming up the road. Multiple engines, moving fast. My stomach dropped before I even saw them. 3 black SUVs, kicking up dust, heading straight for the cabin. I ran, dropped the feed bucket, and sprinted across the yard, hit the porch steps at full speed. Rachel was already at the door, her face pale. "FBI," she said. "They have a warrant." "Get the boys upstairs," I said. "Now, keep them there no matter what." I went straight to the basement. Bigfoot was in his room, sitting on his mattress, looking up at me with those dark, intelligent eyes. He knew something was wrong. He could probably smell my fear. "You have to go deeper," I said, using the hand signals we'd developed. "All the way back. Hide. Don't make any sound. Don't come out until I come get you." He stood slowly, his massive frame unfolding. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. 30 years of obedience, 30 years of trusting us, and now I was asking him to retreat into the darkness again. But he moved, stepped through the false wall into the tunnel system, heading toward the natural cave section where the ceiling was high enough for him to stand upright. I watched him disappear into the shadows, then slid the false wall back into place. Checked it twice, making sure it looked like solid foundation, nothing more. Upstairs, someone was pounding on the door. "Federal agents, we have a warrant to search these premises. Open the door now." My mother was in her chair by the window, hands folded calmly in her lap. She'd lived through the Depression, through a world war, through decades of keeping this impossible secret. She looked at me and nodded once. "We can handle this." I opened the door. 6 agents, body armor, serious expressions. The lead agent handed me the warrant while the others filed past me into the house. "Robert Whitmore, we have authorization to search this entire property, including all outbuildings and any underground structures." "On what grounds?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Evidence suggests you may be harboring an endangered or undocumented species," he said. "We have testimony from multiple sources indicating unusual activity at this location. We also have thermal imaging showing heat signatures inconsistent with normal human or animal occupation." Rachel appeared at the top of the stairs, the twins pressed against her legs, Thomas standing protectively beside her. The agents were already spreading through the house, and I heard boots on the basement stairs. They were going to find him. After 30 years, our secret was about to end. The search took 4 hours. They went through every room, every closet, every drawer. They brought dogs that barked frantically at the basement door, pulled so hard on their leashes the handlers could barely control them. They brought thermal cameras, sound equipment, sensors I didn't recognize. They photographed everything, measured everything, documented everything, and they found the false wall. I was upstairs with Rachel and the boys when I heard one of the agents shout, "We've got something! Hidden room, approximately 10 by 12, recent occupation." Footsteps thundering, voices calling for equipment, for backup. I closed my eyes. 30 years. 3 decades of careful planning, of sacrifice, of keeping the promise my father had made, ending in a single morning. But when I went downstairs, when I saw the agents staring at the empty room behind the false wall, I understood. They'd found his space, the mattresses, the blankets, the books with pictures. They'd found evidence of occupation. But they hadn't found Bigfoot. The lead agent turned to me. "What was being kept here?" "Nothing," I said. "Mr. Whitmore, we have physical evidence of a large living creature kept in this space. We have thermal imaging showing heat signatures in this area as recently as last week. We have testimony from a wildlife biologist who claims to have seen an 8-foot bipedal creature on your property in 1989. What are you hiding?" "Nothing," I repeated. They searched the tunnels. Brought portable lights, ventilation equipment, agents and climbing gear. They mapped the entire system, discovered the cave section, found footprints, massive, unmistakable footprints in the soft cave dirt. But the tunnels went deep, connected to the natural cave network that ran for miles under these mountains. And Bigfoot knew those tunnels better than anyone. He'd been exploring them for 30 years, finding side passages, hidden chambers, ways through the darkness that no human would ever discover. They searched until dark, brought in more lights, more equipment, but the caves defeated them. Too deep, too complex, too dangerous. Around 8 p.m., the lead agent called it off. "We're not equipped for this," he admitted. "We need a proper cave rescue team, mapping equipment, days of preparation." "You won't find anything," I said quietly. "There's nothing down there but rock and darkness." He looked at me with an expression between respect and frustration. "We'll be back," he said, "with better equipment, more personnel. And if you're hiding what we think you're hiding, Mr. Whitmore, obstruction charges are the least of your problems." They left, took boxes of evidence, photographs, samples of fur they'd found in the hidden room, told us not to leave the county, that the investigation was ongoing. When their vehicles finally disappeared down the road, I went to the basement and called into the darkness. "They're gone. You can come out now." Silence, just the drip of water somewhere deep in the caves and the sound of my own breathing. "Please," I whispered, "come back." Nothing. Bigfoot was gone. He didn't return that night, or the next night, or the night after that. I went into the caves with flashlights, called for him, left food at the entrance to the deep tunnels. The food remained untouched. The darkness stayed silent. Rachel thought maybe he'd found a way out, an exit that led to the surface somewhere else in the mountains. Maybe he'd finally escaped, finally found freedom after 30 years of captivity. Part of me hoped she was right. Part of me was devastated. The boys took it hard. The twins cried, asked when Big was coming back, didn't understand why he'd left. Thomas was quiet, withdrawn, angry in a way I recognized, angry at me, at the situation, at the impossible choice my father had made 3 decades ago that led to this moment. "We should have let him go years ago," Thomas said one evening. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "We kept him prisoner. We told ourselves it was protection, but it was just a cage." "He would have died alone out there," I said. "Maybe that would have been better than living alone down there," Thomas shot back. "At least it would have been his choice." I didn't have an answer. He was right. He was absolutely right. The FBI came back a week later with cave specialists, mapping equipment, a team of 12. They spent 3 days underground, documented miles of tunnels, found more footprints, more evidence of Bigfoot's presence. But they didn't find him. The caves were too vast, too complex. He could be anywhere, could have traveled miles through the underground network. They interviewed us separately, asked me about my father, about when we'd captured Bigfoot, about how we'd kept him hidden for so long. I stuck to denial, said we'd found the hidden room when we bought the property, that the footprints must be from some previous owner's attempt at a hoax, that we had no idea what they were talking about. They didn't believe me, but they couldn't prove otherwise. Without Bigfoot himself, without a body or a living specimen, all they had was circumstantial evidence and wild theories. The lead investigator pulled me aside on the last day. "I know what you did," she said quietly. "I know you kept one of the most important zoological discoveries in human history locked in your basement for 3 decades. I know you denied the scientific community, the world, the chance to study it, understand it, protect its species. And I know I can't prove any of it." "Because it's not true," I said. She looked at me with something like pity. "I hope it was worth it. I hope whatever you were protecting was worth the cost." They left. The investigation officially closed 2 months later, classified as unsubstantiated claims, insufficient evidence. Our property was flagged, We were put on a watch list, but no charges were filed. Life slowly returned to normal. The boys went back to their schoolwork, their routines. Rachel tended her garden. My mother's health continued to decline, and every night I went down to the basement and called into the darkness, hoping for an answer that never came. Bigfoot was gone, and I didn't know if that meant he was free or if he was dead somewhere in those endless caves, alone in the dark. October came, the trees turning gold and red, the air crisp with the promise of winter. My mother passed away on the 17th, peacefully in her sleep, with Rachel holding her hand. We buried her in the family plot behind the cabin, next to my father, next to her parents. The boys helped dig, even the twins, small shovels, moving tiny amounts of earth, participating in the ritual. That night, I heard it. 3 knocks from the basement, soft, hesitant, but unmistakable. I was downstairs in seconds, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. "Hello? Are you there?" Another knock, deeper in the tunnels, but closer than before. I moved into the darkness, following the sound. "It's safe. The FBI is gone. They're not coming back. You can come home." The flashlight beam caught movement ahead. A massive shape, fur matted and dirty, eyes reflecting the light. Bigfoot stepped forward into the beam, and I saw how much the months in the deep caves had changed him. He looked thinner, older, worn down by isolation and darkness. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry we let this happen. I'm sorry we kept you here for so long. I'm sorry for everything." He made a sound, low and mournful, and moved closer. Close enough that I could smell him, that musky scent I'd known for 30 years. Close enough that when he reached out one massive hand, he could touch my shoulder. We stood like that for a long moment, human and Bigfoot, connected by 3 decades of shared history and shared imprisonment. Because that's what it had been for both of us. I'd been just as trapped by the secret as he'd been trapped by the basement. "You can leave," I said quietly. "If you want to go, if you want to try to find others like you, or just live free in these mountains, we won't stop you. We'll open the old exit tunnel, the one that leads to the ridge. You can walk away and never come back." He tilted his head, studying me. I'd spent 30 years learning to read his expressions, his body language, the subtle shifts that indicated his thoughts. And I knew what he was thinking. Where would I go? What would I do? This basement, this family, these humans who'd saved him and imprisoned him, this was all he knew, all he'd known for 3/4 of his life. "Or you can stay," I continued, "but differently, better. We'll give you more space, more freedom. You can use the whole tunnel system, come and go as you need. We'll help you if you want help, leave you alone if you want solitude. It's your choice." For the first time, it's actually your choice. He looked toward the deeper tunnels, then back at me. Made a sound that meant, what? Agreement? Understanding? Resignation? He chose to stay. Not in the hidden room, not locked behind false walls, but deeper in the caves where he had space to move, to exist, to be something more than a secret in a basement. We brought him supplies, food, blankets, things to make his space comfortable. But we didn't confine him, didn't control his movements. And slowly, over the following months, I realized something. He wasn't Bigfoot the legend, Bigfoot the cryptid, Bigfoot the zoological discovery. He was just him, an individual with preferences and habits and a personality, a person who'd been reduced to a secret for so long that we'd forgotten to see him as real. That was the greatest crime, not the hiding, but the forgetting. Winter of 2014 brought heavy snow, more than we'd seen in years. The cabin was isolated for weeks at a time, the road impassable, supplies running low. But we managed. We'd always managed. Bigfoot helped in his way. He knew the cave system connected to natural springs, to places where roots could be harvested, to deposits of clay that Rachel used for various projects. He'd bring things up from the depths, offerings, contributions. He was part of the family in a way he'd never been when he was locked away. The boys adjusted to the new arrangement. They'd visit him in the cave sometimes, Thomas especially, sitting in the darkness with flashlights and talking to him like you'd talk to a grandparent. Bigfoot couldn't respond with words, but his presence was response enough. The twins were more cautious now. Old enough to understand the weight of the secret, the danger of telling anyone. Rachel worried about the future. When the boys grow up, she said one evening, when they move away, have their own lives. What happens then? Who takes care of him? Maybe he won't need taking care of, I said. Maybe by then he'll be truly free. Or maybe one of the boys will stay, keep the tradition. But I knew that wasn't fair. Asking another generation to carry this burden, to sacrifice their lives for a secret that had already cost us so much. Thomas deserved to go to college, to see the world, to live without looking over his shoulder. The twins deserved childhoods that weren't defined by what they couldn't tell anyone. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that FBI investigator's words. I hope it was worth it. Was it? Had saving one creature, possibly the last of his kind, possibly not, been worth 30 years of lies, of isolation, of fear? Had we done the right thing? I still don't know. I'm not sure I'll ever know. What I do know is this. Bigfoot existed. He was real, he was intelligent, he was worthy of protection, and we protected him the only way we knew how, even if that protection looked a lot like imprisonment. In January 2015, something changed. Bigfoot started spending more time in the deep caves, disappearing for days at a time. We'd hear sounds sometimes, vocalizations echoing up through the tunnels, not distressed, but calling, like he was trying to communicate with something in the darkness. Thomas thought maybe there were others. Maybe the cave system connected to territories we didn't know about. Places where other Bigfoot still lived, hidden and protected by stone and darkness. Maybe he'd found them, or they'd found him. I wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe he wasn't alone, that somewhere in those mountains his species still survived. One morning in late January, I went down to bring him food and found a gift at the entrance to the deep tunnels. A woven basket made from cave moss and roots, filled with smooth stones arranged in a pattern I didn't understand. Beside it, pressed into soft clay, was a handprint. His hand, large and unmistakable, next to a smaller print. Another hand, similar but different. Smaller, more delicate. He'd found someone, or someone had found him. I took the basket upstairs and showed Rachel. She cried, not from sadness, but from relief. From the hope that maybe after everything, there was still a future for his kind. We never saw the other Bigfoot, never found proof beyond that handprint, that basket. But the sounds in the caves changed. More vocalizations, sometimes two voices instead of one. The evidence of occupation spread, 2 sleeping areas, 2 sets of prints. He wasn't alone anymore, and that had to be enough. The years passed. Thomas left for college in 2016, studying biology, fascinated by conservation and endangered species. He never told his professors why, never explained that he'd grown up with the rarest specimen on Earth living in his basement. The twins started asking harder questions about when they'd be allowed to tell people, about whether the secret would ever end. I didn't have good answers. The FBI watch list remained active. Our property was still flagged in databases I couldn't access. If we revealed the truth now, after denying it so forcefully, the consequences would be severe. And more importantly, Bigfoot, or Bigfoot and his companion, whoever she was, deserved their privacy. Deserved to live without human interference. Rachel and I grew older. Our hair grayed, our joints ached in the cold. the cabin felt larger with the boys mostly gone. We talked sometimes about leaving, selling the property, moving somewhere warm and easy. But we couldn't. We were the guardians, the last line of protection between Bigfoot and the world that would destroy him. In 2018, we heard infant vocalizations from the caves, high-pitched, mewling sounds that could only be one thing: a baby. Bigfoot had reproduced. His species had a future. I sat on the basement stairs that night and cried for relief, for joy, for the weight of responsibility lifting slightly. We'd done it. Against all odds, against all the mistakes we'd made, we'd protected them long enough for there to be a next generation. The FBI never came back. The investigation stayed closed. Occasionally, a cryptozoologist would show up asking questions, or a documentary crew would try to film in the area, but we turned them all away. Mountain people protecting their privacy, nothing unusual. Thomas graduated, got a job with the National Park Service. The twins finished high school, made plans for their futures. And through it all, the sounds in the caves continued. Signs of life, of family, of survival. We see them sometimes now, usually at night. Not in the basement anymore, but at the edge of the clearing, watching the cabin. 2 large shapes and 1 smaller one. Standing in the tree line. We don't approach, don't try to interact, just acknowledge them from the porch. A wave, a nod, mutual recognition between neighbors. The juvenile, the baby we heard in 2018, is growing fast. Already 4 feet tall, curious, less cautious than its parents. It watches the cabin with fascination, the lights, the movements, the humans who live there. Learning about us the way we learned about them. I think about my father often, about the choice he made in 1984, finding an injured creature and deciding to save it instead of turning it over to authorities. It wasn't the choice a scientist would make. It wasn't the choice that would benefit humanity's knowledge. But it was the choice that kept Bigfoot alive, kept his species from extinction, gave him a chance to find another, to reproduce, to continue. Maybe that's all that matters. Not the scientific discovery, not the fame or recognition, but the simple fact of survival. We didn't capture Bigfoot for study. We didn't prove his existence to the world. We just kept him alive long enough to matter. The secret weighs on me less now. I used to wake up every morning afraid it would be discovered, afraid we'd lose everything. Now I wake up and listen for the sounds from the caves, for the proof that they're still there, still surviving. And when I hear those sounds, knocking, vocalizations, movement in the darkness, I feel something close to peace. We didn't save Bigfoot. We just gave him space to save himself. And in the end, maybe that's the only thing we could have done. The only thing we should have done. The secret stays buried. The caves keep their mysteries. And somewhere in the darkness beneath our cabin, a family lives. Hidden, protected, and free. It's 2024 now. I'm 72 years old. Rachel is 70, and the cabin is too big for just the 2 of us. The twins visit occasionally, bringing grandchildren who ask why we live so far from everything. We tell them we like the quiet, like the space. They don't need to know about what lives beneath them while they sleep. Thomas knows he'll inherit the property. He's accepted it, the responsibility, the weight of the secret. He's bringing his family to live here next year, continuing the tradition. His daughter is 8, the same age the twins were when the FBI came, and he'll have to tell her soon. Pass down the promise like my father passed it to me. The Bigfoot family uses the caves less now. They've expanded their territory, found other hiding places in the mountains. We see them maybe once a month, brief appearances at dusk or dawn. The juvenile is nearly full-grown, taller than its parents, stronger. Sometimes it comes closer to the cabin, curious, almost friendly. Last week, it left something on the porch, an arrangement of stones and twisted branches, deliberate, artistic, A gift or a message or just play? I don't know. But I left it there, and the next morning it was gone, replaced by a different pattern. Communication, tentative and strange, but real. The FBI investigation is a decade old now, buried in archives, forgotten by everyone except us. The evidence they took, the fur samples, the photographs, led nowhere. Without a body or a living specimen, it was just another unsolved mystery, another claim without proof. Sometimes I wonder if we should have done it differently. Let scientists study him, protected him with laws instead of secrets. Maybe his species would be safer with official protection, with habitat preserves and conservation efforts. Maybe we were selfish, keeping him hidden, denying the world the chance to know he existed. But I remember the FBI agents, the determination in their eyes, the equipment they brought. They weren't coming to protect Bigfoot. They were coming to capture him, cage him, own him. And I know that if we'd revealed the truth, if we'd proven his existence, he'd have spent the rest of his life in a facility somewhere, being studied and documented and controlled. At least this way, he lived free. At least his children are being born in darkness and secrecy instead of captivity. The price was high. 30 years of lies, of isolation, of living in fear. The price was relationships we couldn't have, places we couldn't go, conversations we couldn't have with anyone outside our immediate family. The price was raising our children in secrecy, burdening them with knowledge they couldn't share. But they're alive. Bigfoot and his family are alive and growing and surviving. That has to count for something. Rachel says sometimes she hears them singing. Late at night, deep vocalizations that echo through the cave system and resonate through the cabin's foundation. Mournful, beautiful sounds that might be communication or might be something more. Culture, art, the expression of something we can't understand. I've heard it too. Lying in bed at 3 a.m, feeling the sound more than hearing it. Vibrations in my chest that could be mistaken for my own heartbeat. And I think about all the things we don't know, all the mysteries still buried in these mountains, all the secrets the earth keeps from us. Bigfoot is just one of them, one secret among thousands. And we're just one family among billions, carrying a burden we never asked for but can't put down. The knocking still comes sometimes. 3 soft raps against the foundation, barely audible, easy to miss if you're not listening. But we're always listening. After 40 years, we're always listening. And when we hear it, we know they're still there, still surviving, still trusting us to keep the promise. That's all we can do. Keep the promise. Protect the secret. Guard the mystery. For as long as we're able. For as long as they need us. For as long as there are Bigfoot in these mountains who need a family willing to sacrifice everything to keep them safe. The knocking came last night. 3 soft raps, familiar and steady, echoing up from the basement at exactly 3 a.m. I woke like I always do, listening, waiting for the second set. It came 30 seconds later. Acknowledgement. Communication. The rhythm we've known for 40 years. I didn't get up. Didn't need to. After all this time, the knocking isn't a warning or a threat. It's just contact, proof that they're still there, still sharing this space with us, still connected to the family that saved their ancestor 4 decades ago. Rachel stirred beside me. "That's nice," she murmured, already falling back asleep. "They're checking in." And she's right. That's exactly what it is. A check-in, a reminder, a quiet declaration of presence. We're here. You're there. We coexist. Tomorrow, Thomas brings his family to start moving in. The transition has begun. Rachel and I are moving to the small guest house we built last year on the eastern edge of the property. Close enough to help, far enough to give them space, and close enough to keep listening for the knocking, to maintain the connection. Thomas knows what to do. He's known since he was 14, since he sat in the darkness with Bigfoot and read picture books by flashlight. He understands the responsibility, the sacrifice, the importance of keeping the promise. And he's ready to pass it on to his daughter when the time comes. The secret will continue. Generation after generation, humans protecting Bigfoot by keeping silent, by denying what we know, by choosing mystery over knowledge. Is it the right choice? I still don't know. Maybe there is no right choice. Maybe we just did the best we could with an impossible situation, and we'll never know if there was a better way. But they're alive. That's what matters. Bigfoot exists, his family exists, his children exist, and somewhere in the darkness beneath this cabin, they're building a future we'll never fully understand or witness. They're surviving. I think about the FBI investigator sometimes, wonder if she still thinks about this case. The one that got away. The proof she almost found. Does she lie awake at night, wondering if we were telling the truth? Does she regret not pushing harder, searching longer, demanding more? Or does she understand, on some level, that some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious? That some discoveries would destroy what they reveal? I hope she understands. I hope she knows we weren't protecting ourselves. We were protecting something more important than proof, more valuable than knowledge. We were protecting life itself. The first light of dawn is coming through the window. Rachel's breathing has deepened into sleep. Downstairs, the cabin is silent, waiting for the next generation to fill it with life and noise and children who will grow up knowing the secret. I close my eyes and listen. Listen to the sounds of the cabin settling, the wind in the trees outside, the distant rush of the creek. And underneath it all, if I listen carefully enough, I can hear them. The family in the caves, moving, breathing, living. Bigfoot. Real, undeniable, hidden, and protected. The word doesn't scare me anymore. Doesn't feel impossible or ridiculous. It's just a name. A name for something we've known for 40 years, something we've protected with everything we have, and we'll keep protecting it. Thomas will protect it. His children will protect it. The promise will continue, passed down like a precious inheritance, guarded like the most valuable treasure. Because that's what it is. A treasure. Not gold or jewels, but something rarer, a species that survived extinction, a family that found a way to coexist with humans, a mystery that remained mysterious despite everything working against it. 3 soft knocks echo through the darkness one more time. Softer now, fading, like a goodnight whisper. I whisper back, too quiet for anyone but myself to hear. Good night, Bigfoot. Sleep well. You're safe here. You've always been safe here. And I believe it. Despite the FBI, despite the close calls, despite 40 years of fear and secrecy, they are safe. Because we kept the promise. Because some secrets are worth keeping. Because Bigfoot is real, and he's ours to protect. And we'll never, ever tell.